Good evening, everyone. It is Sunday, August 15th, and I just wanted to do a podcast on just a summary of the most remarkable things that have been happening, some of them that have been happening over the past couple of months, and really I'm going to speak perhaps about things that I have not spoken about before. So one of the things that's very interesting is that people have always said, meteorologists have always said, I know Tom Skilling has always said, that nature always finds a way of balancing itself out. So, for example, if you see in a month, the month starts off with the hottest temperatures ever. The hottest temperature, let's say it's Fairbanks, Alaska, normal high is 75, then for July. And then the first 2 weeks of July, the high temperatures in the mid-90s for the first 2 weeks of July. Okay? So now, when all the headlines come out, all the papers, it all says, hottest 2 weeks on record. It never happened before. We have the hottest 2 weeks on record. It's been 95 degrees basically every single day for the past 2 weeks. Temperatures are 20 degrees above normal. Okay? Okay, now we go to the next 2 weeks of the month, and every single day, now remember, normal 75, every single day is 55 for the high and 35 for the low. Every single day is mid-50s. So now the headlines, this is media fantasy stuff, because now the headlines in all the papers are going to say, coldest 2 weeks on record in history. So now we got two headlines for the month of July, okay? Plus, we got a chance to throw in the man-made global warming stuff twice. This is due to man-made global warming, okay? The second part is due to man-made global warming. Okay, now let's, then we average out all the temperatures, and it comes to be exactly normal. Average high, 75, average low, 55. So that's probably worthy of another headline. Like, since when has it been normal? Like, since when is it average exactly normal? You can even make a third headline or something like that. So nature has a way of balancing itself out, and it happens to be with the climate change thing. So what really is happening is it balances itself out, but it ends up still being like a half a degree too warm, something like that. So, and gradually increasing over the decades according to whatever method they're using. There's different methods that are used to calculate what the average temperature is. So this is something that's always been happening, and it's something that makes a lot of sense. I mean, at first it's like, wow, but then you think about it again, and it makes a lot of sense, because you have the jet stream, and the jet stream, whenever it makes a dip, it has to bubble up right next to where it makes a dip, because it's like you have a rope, you pull part of it down, so another part's going to go up. I guess it doesn't have to be that way, but that's the way it is. So the area which is north of the jet stream is getting unseasonably cold air, and then there's areas which are normally not south of the jet stream, but now they are south of the jet stream. They're getting unseasonably warm air, and weather goes from west to east. So it's very possible. It makes perfect sense to say that the first 2 weeks will be like this, and the next 2 weeks will be like that. Okay, so I accept that when it comes to temperature. But what happened this past week is something very interesting, because it kind of took place in regards to dew point. Now, I would love to look up what the average dew point in Chicago is in the summer. I think the average dew point is 63. Or let me put it like this. This past July, the average dew point was 63. The average dew point in St. Louis, I think, was 69, and it's usually 67. So, okay, we would have to look up what the average dew point is. But I didn't know if nature has a way of balancing itself out, if that would apply to dew point. Apparently it applies to everything. It's just when it comes to temperature, there's an actual way to figure it out. There's an actual way to handle it so that it makes sense. It makes sense. There's a jet stream. When it comes to dew point, so the question really is, why does it make sense by dew point too? Or let's say like this. There's something like fishy almost, or spooky, about the fact that the highest dew points in many, many years, the most humid air mass ever took place a few days ago, and now the driest air of the summer is here. Dew points are in the 40s, and they took place right next to each other. The very next air mass, the next air mass that entered Chicago after this super high dew point air was this dew points in the 40s, the lowest dew points of the summer. Now, there might have been a transition air mass. There was forecast to be a transition air mass. There kind of was, but then the dew points went right back up close to 80 degrees by Wednesday night already. And this air started to come in on Friday. But the air masses are right next to each other. So I thought there was something interesting of how things, why is it like that? What's causing it to be like that? And why is it like that exactly? Why does it one follow the other? It goes from one extreme to the other extreme. Is this normal? It seems almost like it is. Like everything has to balance itself out. The other way to interpret balancing itself out is over the period of 30 years, things get balanced out. But a lot of times, just over the period of 30 days, things get balanced out. In any case, I mean, you take the lowest dew point, let's say it was 45, I don't know. The highest dew point 79, and you come up with, the average dew point would have been, 30, would be 70, would be 62, which is right at average. You take the lowest dew point the past week and the highest dew point the past 7 days, you end up with an average dew point probably right at average, or about average at 62 degrees for Chicago. So it's just like we just experienced the fifth hottest 5-day. They do these headlines very. If you're smart enough, you're able to create a headline over almost nonsense. This was the third warmest August 7th to 11th on record, and it was the third warmest since 1950, but the fifth warmest on record. So, the significance of that, is it significant? I have to think about it more. Is that significant? Because we're not saying it's the warmest 5-day period. The average temperature was 79.5 degrees. That is significant. 79.5. That's St. Louis heat. That means we went through a 5-day period of St. Louis heat. St. Louis heat. It came up to Chicago. Okay, that's warm. But the dew points, though, were really, really high. The dew points were well above normal. I mean, they were approaching record territory and probably broke records in certain counties. Yet if you average it all out over the past 7 days, we quickly balanced it all out. Things balanced out very quickly. So that's something interesting. Another thing is that all droughts in the desert Southwest end in floods. That's a yesod. Everyone knows that. Like on AccuWeather, they talk about it. Like it always ends with floods. Is it ending? We don't know. But there's been a ton of floods there this past month or so. Lots of flash floods over there. This summer has been very interesting in that although it has not been 100% consistent, there has not been 100% consistency in there being a heat wave in the upper Midwest. It hasn't always been in the 90s, or when the summer started out, it was in the 100 and teens. It hasn't always been like that the whole summer. But there has been a general theme that the upper Midwest has been warmer than the rest of the Midwest. That's the general theme. That's what's been happening this week too. And that started in June. It was very apparent when temperatures started to hit 110 degrees in North Dakota. It was very apparent that we're in for something strange. And that kind of continued throughout the summer. I thought it would kind of eventually hit the Chicago area on a consistent basis, and never quite did. But even today, we're still seeing those temperatures. International falls, temperatures are in the low 90s, which a few days ago, the temperatures in International Falls were highs in the mid-60s. That might have even been yesterday. I don't know. It was just a few days ago. There, too, you have a balancing act. So temperatures are in the low 90s and the 90s for like a large part of Canada. You can't even see how far up the 90s go because the map in the newspaper doesn't go that far. It goes pretty far up, but it's in the 90s everywhere in Canada according to that map, but I'm sure a lot of Canada's not in the 90s. And you have that Pacific Northwest. When's that going to get balanced out? I am not quite sure. But in any case, what's the point of the podcast? The point of the podcast is that it's just remarkable how nature always balances itself out, and sometimes it does it so quickly, and the chiddush over here is that it's not just doing it with air temperature. That's been known to happen right before an Arctic front moves through and unseasonably warm air. That's right before a front. That's when the warm air comes. Fine, that all makes sense. But it's doing it by dew points as well. It's just interesting. It's by dew points as well. There's no logical reason. I mean, there's no reason why the dew point had to be 80 last week. Anyways, that's the end of my podcast. I wish everybody a great, wonderful day.